The cruelest message is not the one that ends a marriage, but the one that proves one person has already stopped respecting it. Logan Whitaker was standing in the kitchen of his house in Colorado Springs when his phone lit up on the counter. It was a little after 7 in the evening, the hour when the neighborhood usually softened into porch lights, garage doors, and the smell of dinner drifting from open windows. On the table, 2 plates sat across from each other, untouched. The chicken had gone from warm to room temperature. The roasted potatoes had lost their steam. A glass of iced tea sweated a dark circle onto the wooden table. Natalie once insisted they refinish together because she said old things deserved to be saved. Logan wiped his hands on a dish towel and looked at the screen. Natalie's name appeared first, then the message beneath it. Going on a solo trip with my first love. Do not be jealous. For a few seconds, the room became so quiet that Logan could hear the refrigerator hum, the second hand clicking on the clock above the pantry, and a dog barking 2 houses down. He read the sentence once, then again, waiting for some hidden meaning to appear, some follow-up message explaining that it was a joke, a typo, a bad attempt at honesty. Nothing came. No apology. No context. No "I should have told you sooner." Just that one clean line, dressed up like independence and delivered like a challenge. His wife was telling him she was leaving town with Chris Donovan, the man she used to call her first real heartbreak, and she was warning Logan not to have feelings about it. That was the part that stayed in his chest. Not the trip, not even Chris. It was the way she had already labeled his pain before he could speak. If he objected, he was jealous. If he asked questions, he was insecure. If he said the sentence hurt him, she would turn the hurt into proof that he was small. Logan placed the towel beside the sink. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. A younger version of him might have typed too fast, called her, demanded answers, asked where she was, asked why she thought a husband should accept being told about another man like a weather update. But Logan did none of that. He stood there beneath the yellow kitchen light, breathing slowly, feeling 9 years of marriage shift under his feet like ice cracking on a frozen lake. He thought about every time Natalie had said Chris was only part of her past, every time she had smiled at her phone and said Logan was reading too much into it, every time she had accused him of being controlling when all he had asked for was basic respect. Then he did the one thing Natalie had not expected from him. He took a screenshot. He sent it to his own email with the subject line, "Natalie message." He placed the phone face down on the counter and pulled out the chair at the table. The empty place across from him looked almost staged now, like the house itself was showing him what he had been refusing to see. Natalie had not simply chosen a trip. She had chosen to make sure he knew she could cross a line and still expect him to wait at home, embarrassed into silence by the fear of looking jealous. Logan sat down, but he did not eat. The knife and fork rested neatly beside his plate, untouched, shining under the light. Outside, a car passed slowly along the street, tires hissing over damp pavement from an afternoon storm. The ordinary world kept moving, as if a marriage had not just been reduced to one careless message on a phone screen. He looked at the meal, the 2 plates, the house they had painted together, the hallway photos from vacations where they still looked like people heading in the same direction. Then he reached for his phone again, not to answer Natalie, but to open the folder where he kept household documents, bank statements, mortgage records, credit card notices, the boring evidence of a life built by 2 people and quietly taken for granted by one. His chest still hurt, but the hurt was changing shape. It was no longer panic. It was no longer disbelief. It was becoming something steadier, colder, and far more useful. At 8:30, Natalie sent another message. "You are being quiet." Logan looked at it, waited until the screen went dark, and set the phone down again. For the first time in 9 years, he did not explain himself. For the first time in 9 years, he did not try to close the distance she had created. And for the first time in 9 years, he understood that silence was not always weakness. Sometimes silence was the moment a man stopped begging to be respected and started preparing to protect himself. 9 years earlier, Natalie had loved Logan Whitaker because he was the kind of man who made chaos feel survivable. They met during a spring snowstorm in Colorado Springs, the kind that arrived after everyone had already decided winter was finished. Natalie's sedan had stalled in a grocery store parking lot, hazard lights blinking weakly through wet flakes, while she stood beside it in a thin jacket with her arms wrapped around herself. Logan was coming out with a bag of dog food for an old neighbor when he noticed her trying not to cry into her phone. He did not make a show of helping. He asked one calm question, checked the battery, drove home for jumper cables, and came back 20 minutes later with a thermos of coffee because he said cold hands made everything feel worse. Natalie used to tell that story like it was proof the universe had been kind to her. She said Logan arrived when she needed someone steady. Back then, steady was not an insult. It was a miracle. Their early years were simple in the way good years often are before people learn to compare them to someone else's highlight reel. They rented a small duplex near Academy Boulevard, where the heater clicked too loudly in winter and the bedroom window rattled whenever the wind came down from the mountains. Logan worked long days managing equipment schedules for a construction supply company, then came home and fixed whatever needed fixing. A loose cabinet hinge, a leaking faucet, the porch light that flickered when the temperature dropped below 20 degrees. Natalie was still paying down credit cards from a version of herself that bought things when she felt lost. Logan never shamed her for it. He sat with her at the kitchen table, opened spreadsheets, helped her call creditors, and celebrated every small balance they paid off like it was a graduation. She used to reach across the table, touch his wrist, and say, "You make me feel like I can breathe." He believed her. When they bought the house, it was not impressive, but it was theirs. A two-bedroom place with a narrow backyard, old carpet, and a front door that stuck in the summer heat. Logan spent weekends pulling up flooring, repainting trim, and sanding the dining table they would later eat at in silence. Natalie chose the wall colors, labeled boxes in neat handwriting, and stood in the living room with paint on her cheek, laughing because they had no idea what they were doing and were doing it anyway. There were nights they ate cheap takeout on the floor because the furniture had not arrived. There were mornings when Logan scraped snow from her windshield before leaving for work, even if it meant his own coffee went cold. There were birthdays, hikes in Garden of the Gods, Sunday drives with no plan, and quiet evenings when Natalie rested her head on his shoulder and called him home. That word stayed with Logan longer than it stayed with her. Home. He built his life around it. He thought marriage meant showing up when the exciting parts faded, paying the bill before the notice came, buying medicine at midnight, listening even when the story took too long, and keeping promises no one else would ever see. For a long time, Natalie loved that about him. Then slowly, almost politely, she began to resent it. His reliability became predictability. His calm became boring. His patience became something she pushed against just to see if it would finally break. She started saying she missed feeling alive, missed being surprised, missed the version of herself who did not know what every Tuesday night would look like. Logan tried to understand. He suggested weekend trips, dinners downtown, counseling, time away from work. But Natalie did not want the life they had to feel new again. She wanted to believe there was another version of her waiting somewhere untouched by groceries, mortgage payments, and the man who had held her together when she was still falling apart. By the time Chris Donovan's name came back into their house, Logan did not yet know he was hearing the beginning of the end. He only knew Natalie smiled differently when the past called, and for the first time in years, the home he had built began to feel like a place where someone was already packing in her heart. Chris Donovan did not return to Natalie's life like a stranger. He returned like a song she thought she had outgrown, suddenly playing in a room she had convinced herself was quiet. It started with a comment on one of her photos, nothing dramatic, just a line about how Colorado sunsets still looked the same. Natalie showed it to Logan at first, holding up her phone while they were folding laundry on a Sunday evening. "Can you believe Chris found me?" she said, smiling with the kind of surprise people use when they want permission to be excited. Logan remembered the name. Every husband remembers the name that comes with a certain silence. Chris Donovan, the college boyfriend from Boulder, the one who played guitar, wrote half-finished songs, and left Natalie crying through an entire summer after graduation because he said he could not be tied down while chasing music in Nashville. Years later, his profile looked carefully weathered: leather jacket, roadside diners, acoustic guitar cases, desert highways, captions about freedom and becoming who you were before the world named you. He had aged just enough to seem thoughtful, not enough to seem settled. At first, the messages looked harmless. Old friends catching up, memories about campus coffee shops, a snowed-in weekend, a concert in a basement bar where Natalie said the speakers barely worked, but everyone felt alive. Logan did not object. He wanted to be the kind of husband who trusted his wife without turning history into a cage. But trust has a sound, and so does secrecy. Within a month, Natalie's phone began traveling with her from room to room. She smiled at messages in the middle of dinner and turned the screen down when Logan walked by. She started using phrases that sounded borrowed from someone living out of a suitcase. Reset, alignment, old self, unfinished story. Chris did not insult Logan directly. He was smarter than that. He simply asked questions that made the life Logan built seem like a waiting room. Are you happy, or are you just comfortable? Do you ever miss the woman who made decisions without asking what made sense? When was the last time you did something just because it scared you? Natalie carried those questions back into their house, like lit matches cupped in her hands. Logan felt the heat before he saw the flame. One night, while they were clearing plates after dinner, Natalie said, "Chris thinks some people confuse stability with happiness." Logan dried a glass slowly. "And what do you think?" She shrugged, but there was nothing casual in it. "I think maybe he knows a part of me that got buried." Logan looked at her then, really looked. The woman who once called him home was now speaking as if home were the place that had covered her up. He asked, calmly, "Is this friendship helping our marriage or replacing something in it?" Natalie laughed, not loudly, but sharply enough to mark the floor between them. "That is such a Logan question." He waited. She set a plate in the cabinet and said, "You always want everything labeled. Safe," explained. "Chris just understands that people are allowed to feel things without making it a courtroom." The word stung because Logan had not accused her of anything. He had only asked to be included in the truth. From that night on, Chris became less a person than a mirror. Natalie used to see herself younger, freer, less responsible for the life she had chosen. She played old songs while getting dressed. She bought a denim jacket like one she wore in college. She talked about taking space, breathing again, remembering who she was before marriage made everything practical. Logan tried to meet her halfway. He suggested a weekend in Aspen, a few days in Santa Fe, dinner somewhere new, even counseling if she felt lost. But Natalie did not want discovery with Logan. She wanted permission to pretend the past was waiting for her exactly where she left it, polished clean of every reason it had ended. Chris gave her that illusion one message at a time. He did not have to ask her to step away from her marriage. He only had to make standing still feel like disappearing. And by the time Natalie began saying his name with that soft, distant smile, Logan understood something he had not wanted to admit. Chris had not come back to steal his wife all at once. He had come back to teach her how to call betrayal self-discovery. Natalie announced the Santa Fe trip on a Thursday morning while Logan was tying his boots by the back door. She said it like she was telling him about a dentist appointment, casual enough to make any objection seem dramatic. "I booked a few days away," she said, stirring honey into her coffee. "Just me. I need to reset." Logan looked up from the laces. Outside, the Colorado morning was bright and cold, with frost still clinging to the grass. "When?" he asked. "Next weekend." She did not look at him when she answered. That was the first thing he noticed. The second was the way her phone was face down beside the mug, close enough for her fingertips to rest on it like a guard at a door. Logan wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe Santa Fe meant art galleries, quiet streets, adobe walls glowing under desert light, and a woman trying to breathe through whatever restlessness had been pulling her away from him. He even wanted to believe that space could help, because believing otherwise meant admitting the house had been filling with smoke for months while he kept opening windows and calling it weather. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked. Natalie gave a small smile, the kind that did not reach her eyes. "That would defeat the point." He nodded, though something in him lowered itself into caution. "Then I hope it helps." She seemed relieved, but not grateful. That difference stayed with him. 2 days later, Logan was in the garage looking for a socket wrench when his phone buzzed with a notification from a social media app he rarely used. Aaron Blake had tagged him in a post about a trail cleanup, and while Logan opened it, another story appeared at the top of the screen. Chris Donovan. A boarding pass on a coffee shop table. Destination, Albuquerque. Same weekend. Logan stood in the garage with the smell of dust, rubber, and cold metal around him, staring at the photo longer than he wanted to. Albuquerque was not Santa Fe, but it was close enough that pretending not to understand felt like lying to himself. He clicked away, then clicked back, as if the second look might change the date. It did not. That evening, Natalie was upstairs packing a small canvas bag when Logan asked, "Is Chris going to New Mexico too?" The room changed before she answered. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. Her hand paused over a folded sweater. "I do not know his schedule," she said. Logan stood in the doorway, calm because he knew if his voice rose, she would use the volume to ignore the question. His story showed Albuquerque. Same weekend. Natalie placed the sweater in the bag with slow precision. "You are checking his stories now." It was there. "That is not an answer. Neither was yours." For a moment, her face hardened, and Logan saw the truth behind the performance. She was not upset because he was wrong. She was upset because he had noticed. "Logan," she said, drawing his name out like a teacher correcting a child. "I am not asking permission to take a trip." "I did not say you were." "Then stop acting like I need to submit an itinerary." He looked at the bag, the new scarf on the bed, the travel-size bottles lined up beside her purse, and the phone glowing briefly with a message she turned over before he could see it. "I am asking if my wife is going away with the man she has been emotionally hiding behind for months." Natalie laughed once, short and cold. "Emotionally hiding behind. Listen to yourself." She zipped the bag halfway, then stopped and looked at him with a calm that felt rehearsed. "Maybe this is exactly why I need space. Everything becomes an accusation with you." Logan wanted to remind her of the late-night messages, the old songs, the way Chris had become a third voice in their marriage. Instead, he only said, "A solo trip usually means going alone." Natalie did not answer. Not then. Not with words. She finished packing, carried the bag downstairs, and left for a boutique appointment without saying goodbye. The next evening, after the dinner that went cold and the house went still, her message finally came through. "Going on a solo trip with my first love. Do not be jealous." That was when Logan understood the lie had never been about geography. Santa Fe was not where Natalie was going to find herself. It was where she was going to prove that Logan could be disrespected and still be expected to wait quietly at home. Logan did not follow Natalie to Santa Fe. He did not drive south through the night, did not call hotels, did not search parking lots, and did not send Chris Donovan a single message. That would have given Natalie exactly what she expected: a jealous husband she could point to, a shaking voice she could dismiss, a reaction big enough to hide the disrespect that caused it. Instead, Logan stayed in the quiet house in Colorado Springs and let the silence do what anger never could. It made things clear. After her message, he sat at the dining table until the ice melted in both glasses and the food on both plates looked like evidence of a life that had gone cold. Then he carried the dishes to the sink, wrapped the untouched meal, and put it in the refrigerator because habit still had its hands on him. That was the strange cruelty of betrayal. The world did not stop asking you to do ordinary things. Dishes still needed rinsing. Lights still needed turning off. The front door still needed locking. But inside Logan, something had changed its address. He was no longer standing in the place where Natalie could hurt him and then tell him what to call the pain. At 10:15, he walked into the small home office beside the guest room and turned on the desk lamp. The yellow light spread over stacks of household files he had not opened in months. Mortgage statements, insurance policies, joint account records, credit card bills, tax returns, travel receipts, the quiet paperwork of a marriage that Natalie had treated like background noise until it became useful. Logan opened his laptop and began creating folders. He labeled one messages, another travel, another accounts, another home. He saved the screenshot of Natalie's text in 3 places. Then he searched the shared email for Santa Fe, Albuquerque, hotel, wellness, retreat, and Chris. The results came slowly at first, then faster than he wanted. A boutique hotel reservation in Santa Fe, charged to a joint credit card. 2 airfare charges within minutes of each other, one hidden under a travel platform, another under a name Logan recognized from Chris's posts. Restaurant deposits, rideshare receipts, a charge at a spa Natalie had called a self-care expense. For months, she had been dressing choices in soft words. Healing, space, reset. Logan stared at the screen and realized how easily language could turn selfishness into something that sounded almost noble. His phone buzzed again, but not from Natalie. It was Aaron Blake, his closest friend since trade school, the kind of man who did not waste words. Saw something weird. You okay? Then came a screenshot from Chris's public story. A close-up of a guitar case beside a carry-on bag, the caption reading, New Mexico always knew how to bring old songs back. Logan leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes. Not because he was surprised, but because confirmation has a weight of its own. At 11 o'clock, he searched for Megan Carlisle, the Denver family law attorney Aaron had mentioned years earlier during his own difficult separation. Logan almost closed the browser twice. Calling an attorney felt like admitting a door had opened that could not be shut. But then he looked at Natalie's message again, at the words "do not be jealous," and understood that she had already walked through that door and left him standing on the wrong side of it. He scheduled a consultation for the next morning and attached the documents he had gathered. When the automated confirmation arrived, his hands were steady. The next day, Megan called at 9 sharp. Her voice was calm, professional, and clean of sympathy that would have made him feel weaker. Logan told her the facts in order: the renewed contact with Chris, the hidden messages, the Santa Fe trip, the joint card charges, the text. Megan listened without interrupting. When he finished, she asked, "Do you want to punish her, or do you want to protect yourself?" Logan looked across the office at a framed photo of him and Natalie in Garden of the Gods, smiling beneath a red rock arch, like people who still believed love was enough. "I want to stop being the last person respecting this marriage," he said. Megan was quiet for one beat. "Then from this point forward, do not argue. Do not threaten. Do not chase. Preserve records, limit unnecessary spending, and keep communication written when possible. Emotion will make noise. Documents will make sense." After the call, Logan walked through the house slowly. He noticed the hallway photos, Natalie's scarf over the chair, the mug she always left near the sink. Nothing looked different, and that made it worse. A marriage could end before a single suitcase moved. Sometimes it ended the moment one person treated the other's dignity like a test. Logan returned to the office, opened a new folder, and typed one word at the top of a blank document: timeline. While Logan built the timeline in Colorado Springs, Natalie was building a story in Santa Fe. Her first post appeared just after sunrise, a photo of a narrow street glowing gold, adobe walls warm under the New Mexico light, a paper coffee cup held in one hand, and the caption, "Giving myself permission to breathe again." Logan saw it while sitting at his desk with a legal pad, a bank statement, and the quiet discipline Megan Carlisle had asked from him. He did not like the post. He did not comment. He did not send a bitter message asking who took the picture. He only saved it, noted the time, and placed it into the folder labeled travel. An hour later, Aaron Blake sent another screenshot. Chris had posted a black and white photo of a guitar leaning against a hotel room chair, with the same patterned rug visible in the corner that appeared in Natalie's story. No faces, no tags, just enough to deny, but not enough to erase. Logan stared at the two images side by side and felt the old ache trying to rise in him, the one that wanted answers, the one that wanted to be told he was not crazy. He let it rise, then let it pass. Megan's words stayed with him. Emotion will make noise, documents will make sense. So he documented. By noon, Natalie posted breakfast on a patio, blue plates, silverware, sunlight, a second coffee pushed just barely to the edge of the frame. The caption said, "Some places remind you who you were before life got too loud." Logan remembered when she used to say he made life quiet in a good way. He remembered Sunday mornings in their duplex, snow at the windows, her bare feet tucked under his leg on the couch, while they planned a future neither of them could afford yet. Now she was selling quiet as something she had to escape him to find. That was the part that made his hands pause over the keyboard. Not jealousy, not even anger. It was the humiliation of watching his wife take a private wound and decorate it for strangers. Messages came from two mutual friends by mid-afternoon. One asked if everything was okay. Another sent a cautious, "Hey man, I just saw Natalie's story and did not know if you knew." Logan answered both with the same calm line: "I am aware, thank you for checking." Nothing more. He refused to give the situation more oxygen than Natalie had already stolen from the room. In Santa Fe, she seemed to mistake his silence for weakness. Around 4, she sent him a picture of a plaza fountain with no words attached, as if testing whether he would finally respond. He did not. At 6, another message arrived. "You are making this weird by being so quiet." Logan looked at the sentence for a long time. She had left with her first love, framed it as self-discovery, warned him not to be jealous, and now his silence was the problem. He almost laughed. but there was no humor in the sound that tried to leave his chest. Instead, he added the message to the folder and continued reviewing charges from the joint account. A dinner reservation appeared under a restaurant 2 blocks from the hotel. A rideshare receipt followed. A boutique purchase from the afternoon. Each line was ordinary by itself, but together they told a story Natalie would later try to soften. She was not lost. She was choosing. Meanwhile, Chris was careful, but not careful enough. Aaron sent one final screenshot that night. A reflection in a dark window behind Chris. Natalie's bracelet visible on the wrist of the woman standing beside him. Logan zoomed in once, then stopped. He did not need to punish himself with details. He saved the image, closed the laptop, and walked into the kitchen. The house smelled faintly of coffee and old wood. The dining table was clear now, the 2 plates washed and put away. The room returned to order as if nothing had happened. That almost broke him more than the photos. Pain looked dramatic in movies, but in real life it often looked like a clean kitchen and a man standing alone under a light he forgot to turn off. Logan opened the drawer where they kept spare keys, batteries, and old receipts. Beneath a stack of takeout menus, he found a small velvet ring box from years ago. He did not remove his wedding band yet. Not that night. But he placed the box on the counter and looked at it long enough to understand what was coming. Natalie was posting freedom. Chris was posting nostalgia. Logan was building a record. And by the time she came home, she would learn that silence was not the same as waiting. Natalie came home on Monday afternoon with a canvas suitcase rolling behind her and a version of herself already prepared for battle. Logan heard the garage door rise, the wheels crossing the concrete, the familiar pause before she unlocked the mudroom door. He was standing in the kitchen, not because he wanted to confront her, but because he refused to hide in his own house. The room looked almost too neat. The counters were clear. The dining table was empty. The ring box sat closed beside a white envelope from Megan Carlisle's office. Natalie stepped in wearing sunglasses on top of her head and a desert-colored scarf draped over one shoulder, carrying the faint scent of airport coffee and hotel soap. She stopped when she saw him. For half a second, her face showed relief, as if his presence meant the old pattern was still waiting for her. She would explain, he would question, she would accuse him of overreacting, and eventually he would apologize for making her feel trapped. But then her eyes moved to the envelope. "What is that?" she asked. Logan did not move. "Something we need to discuss." Natalie set her suitcase upright with a soft click. "Can I at least put my bag down before you start?" "Your bag is already down." The calmness in his voice irritated her more than anger would have. She took off her sunglasses and dropped them on the counter. "I knew you were going to do this." "Do what?" "Punish me for taking space." Logan looked at her, really looked, and saw the story she had rehearsed on the flight home. In that story, she was the suffocated wife, Chris was the symbol of freedom, and Logan was the insecure husband standing in the doorway with rules in his hands. He reached for the envelope and slid it across the counter. "This is a notice of legal separation consultation and temporary financial protection recommendations. Megan Carlisle drafted the initial documents this morning." Natalie did not touch the envelope at first. She stared at it, as if it might change into something less real. "You called a lawyer?" "Yes." Her laugh came fast, sharp, and hollow. "Because I went to Santa Fe?" Logan's hand rested near the ring box. "No. Because you lied about going alone, used our joint account, left with a man you knew was damaging our marriage, and then sent me a message designed to make my pain sound like jealousy." Natalie's mouth tightened. "You are making this sound ugly." "It was ugly before I described it." She finally picked up the envelope and pulled out the papers. Her eyes moved quickly over the pages. Legal separation, communication boundaries, review of joint spending, temporary limits on shared credit, documentation of travel-related expenses. Each phrase removed another layer of control from her face. "You cannot just freeze me out of our life," she said. "I am not freezing you out. I am protecting what we built until we can decide what is left." "This is insane, Logan." "No," he said quietly. "What is insane is telling your husband you are leaving with your first love and then expecting him to sit here like furniture until you come home." The sentence landed harder than he expected. Natalie looked away first. She walked toward the hallway, then stopped. The bedroom door was open. From where she stood, she could see the difference immediately. Logan's side of the closet was mostly empty. His work shirts were gone. His boots were gone. The framed photo from their anniversary trip had been turned face down on the dresser, not dramatically, just enough to say the story inside it no longer matched the room. Natalie turned back slowly. Where are your things? Guest room for now. So that is it. You move out of our room and call that maturity. Logan picked up the ring box, opened it, and placed his wedding band inside. He did it without ceremony, without anger, without giving her the performance she had expected. No, he said. I call it accepting what you already chose. Natalie stared at the small box as if it had spoken louder than either of them. For the first time since she walked in, she did not have an immediate answer. She had prepared for rage. She had prepared for questions. She had even prepared for tears. She had not prepared for a husband who had stopped auditioning for her respect. Logan slid the box beside the envelope. From now on, we communicate in writing about money, the house, and the separation. Megan will send the formal next steps. Natalie's voice dropped. You are really doing all this because I took one trip? Logan looked toward the kitchen table where 2 plates had gone cold days earlier, then back at the woman who had made disrespect sound like healing. No, he said. I am doing this because you turned betrayal into a test, and I finally stopped taking it. Natalie did not go to the guest room that night. She left the house instead, driving too fast down the quiet Colorado Springs street with the legal envelope on the passenger seat and Logan's last sentence still sitting in the air behind her. For the first time since Chris had come back into her life, she did not feel free. She felt exposed. The Santa Fe trip had been easy when it was wrapped in desert light, old songs, and captions about breathing again. It had been easy when Chris smiled across a patio table and told her she deserved a life that made her feel alive. It had been easy when Logan was just a name on her phone, quiet enough to be dismissed as sulking. But the envelope changed the shape of everything. Legal separation, financial protection, written communication, documentation. Those words did not care how poetic she made the weekend sound. They made it ordinary, traceable, and real. Natalie parked outside a coffee shop near downtown, the same place where she and Logan used to go after Sunday hikes, and called Chris. He answered on the 5th ring. Hey, he said, his voice lower than usual. You home? Logan called a lawyer, she said. Silence opened on the line. Not concern, not outrage. Calculation. What kind of lawyer? Family law. Chris exhaled softly. Natalie, I told you this could get complicated. She stared through the windshield at the coffee shop window, where a young couple sat close together over one laptop. You told me I was allowed to choose myself. You are, Chris said quickly. Of course you are. I just do not want to be dragged into your marriage. The words landed so cleanly she almost did not feel them at first. Dragged into your marriage. As if he had not boarded the same direction, stayed in the same hotel, sat across from her in restaurants. Let her believe the past had returned with courage instead of convenience. You were with me, she said. We were 2 old friends catching up. Natalie closed her eyes. There it was. The retreat. The careful rewrite. The same soft erasing she had tried to use on Logan was now being used on her. Chris. Her voice cracked around his name. You said this meant something. It did, he said, but there was distance in it now, miles of it. But I cannot be responsible for what Logan does. You need to handle that part. That part. Her husband. Her home. Her choices. The financial records. The message she had sent because she wanted Logan to feel small enough not to question her. Suddenly, every word Chris had spoken in Santa Fe sounded different. Are you happy, or just comfortable? Do you miss who you used to be? You deserve to breathe again. None of it had cost him anything. That was why he had said it so easily. Logan's love had cost him years of showing up, fixing things, paying bills, scraping snow from windshields, staying when life was not cinematic. Chris's attention had cost him a few messages, a flight, and the courage to disappear the moment consequences arrived. Natalie ended the call without saying goodbye. She sat in the car until the windows fogged at the edges, watching strangers move through their ordinary evening. For the first time, ordinary did not look like a cage. It looked like something she had thrown away because someone with a guitar and old memories had made responsibility feel like death. When she finally returned home, the porch light was on, but not for her in the way it used to be. Logan had left a note on the kitchen counter beside a printed list of household items that needed to be separated, accounts to be reviewed, and communication boundaries Megan Carlisle had recommended. It was not cruel. That made it worse. There was no insult to fight, no emotional outburst to twist, no jealousy to accuse. Just order. Just consequences. Just a man carefully removing himself from the position where she could wound him and then ask him to apologize for bleeding. Natalie stood in the hallway and looked toward the guest room door, where a line of light showed underneath. She wanted to knock. She wanted to say she had been confused, that Chris had complicated things, that the trip had not meant what Logan thought. But even in her own mind, the excuses sounded thin. Logan had not lost her to Chris. She had used Chris to prove she could still be chosen, then discovered that being chosen by the wrong person can cost you the only person who ever truly stayed. By morning, the house in Colorado Springs felt different, not louder, not emptier, just more honest. Logan sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee cooling beside the legal folder, while pale lights spread across the same wood surface where Natalie's message had first changed everything. Across the hall, he could hear her moving softly, careful now in a way she had not been careful before. The night had taken something from both of them. From Natalie, it had taken the illusion that she could call disrespect freedom and expect Logan to keep translating it as pain he was supposed to swallow. From Logan, it had taken the last fragile hope that if he loved quietly enough, waited patiently enough, and stayed steady long enough, she would remember what home had meant before she started chasing the echo of who she used to be. Their first meeting with Megan Carlisle happened 2 days later in a downtown Denver office with glass walls, gray chairs, and a silence so professional it made every excuse sound smaller. Megan placed the timeline on the table first. The text message, the travel dates, the hotel charge, the posts from Santa Fe, the screenshots from Aaron Blake, the joint account expenses. Nothing was presented with anger. That was what made it impossible to dismiss. Natalie sat across from Logan, hands folded tightly in her lap, trying to hold herself together as each fact removed another soft name she had given the trip. Healing, space, reset, old friends. None of those words looked strong beside receipts, dates, and the sentence she had sent because she wanted him to feel powerless. It was not what you think, Natalie said finally, but her voice did not sound certain enough to carry the words. Logan looked at her, and there was no performance left in him. I am not here because of one weekend, he said. I am here because you knew it would hurt me, and you sent the message anyway. Natalie's eyes filled. I was confused. Logan nodded once, slowly. No, you were curious how much disrespect I would still call love. That sentence ended the argument before it could begin. Megan continued outlining the next steps: written communication, account review, temporary living arrangements, protection of shared property, and space for both sides to decide whether legal separation would become divorce. It was calm, measured, adult. That made Natalie look even more lost. She had expected Logan to fight for her attention. She had not expected him to fight for his dignity. When the meeting ended, Natalie followed him into the hallway. Do you still love me? She asked. Logan stopped near the elevator, the legal folder tucked under his arm. For a moment, the question pulled him backward through 9 years. The snowstorm where they met, the duplex near Academy Boulevard, the dining table they refinished, the porch light he always left on. I love the woman who used to call me home, he said. But I cannot keep being a house someone only returns to after she is done proving she can leave. Natalie covered her mouth, and Logan saw the truth finally reach her. He did not crush her with revenge. He crushed her by no longer standing where she could test his pain. He walked out of the building alone, into a clear Colorado afternoon, and the mountains in the distance looked sharp enough to cut through every lie he had been living under. He did not feel victorious. He felt awake. Sometimes the end of a marriage is not a slammed door or a shouted confession. Sometimes it is a man reading one message, saving the proof, and realizing he is allowed to stop being punished for having self-respect. What would you have done in Logan's place? Confronted the trip before it happened, or stayed silent until the truth showed itself? Share your thoughts, because stories like this remind us that love without respect eventually becomes a room no one can breathe in. And if you believe quiet strength, dignity, and hard truth deserve to be heard, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next story.